Welcome to Seasoned. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum.
Rocco DiSpirito is headed to Connecticut at the end of the month, and we'll take any excuse to catch up with the James Beard award-winning chef.
Coming up this hour, you'll get a preview of the Sun Wine and Food Fest at Mohegan Sun with chefs Rocco DiSpirito and Adam Young of Sift Bake Shop and Mystic. And I'll be at the fest too. I'm really looking forward to feeding the food lovers of Connecticut.
Before we get to what the chefs are presenting at the fest, we wanted to spend some time getting to know our guests and learn a little bit about their culinary journeys.
First up, Chef Rocco.
Rocco DiSpirito, thank you so much for joining Seasoned.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. I am getting my congas out and I'm getting them set up.
Plum, he mentions congas because both of you make fantastic pizza. And someone gave me a tip that to work with the dough, you should lightly tap it like a conga.
Hey.
That would do something to the dough. I cannot tell you with complete honesty that it did anything to my pizza dough, but it's still a nice way to talk about pizza and dough and congas.
It's a fantastic descriptive way of talking about it, and it sounds like a lot of fun.
It actually was. Rocco, your career is vast. You have so much experience in the culinary world, but I wonder if you wouldn't mind taking us back for our listeners and talk a little bit about who your first food influences were and when that was.
I'm happy to take you back. I thought we were going to keep it into the 20th and 21st century, though. I want to go back all the way. 1640, there was a...
Back when they had to put together a fire in the woods.
I started very young, so I've been doing this for a long time. There were many influences in my life. Some I didn't realize until later on. I had no idea how much of an influence my family was till I was 35. And then I realized, oh, that's why. That explains the palate. That explains everything. That explains my love for food, for hospitality, for entertaining, for cooking, holiday celebration. All of it comes from this, very large family of Italian Americans who just stubbornly held on to their traditions in the United States and passed them on to me. But there was a man named Sal who was a massive influence on me at a very young age. And he was I guess I was the lucky kid who got chosen. And he was the unlucky employer who had to let me play stickball in the courthouse across the street during work hours with his kids. It was a summer job in a pizzeria in Queens, and he ended up teaching me, so many things that I needed to know for the rest of my life in cooking. It's like the book, everything you need to learn, you learn in kindergarten. It was sort of like everything I need to learn about cooking, I learned in a pizzeria in Queens when I was 11 years old. Most of it was about being cordial and generous and kind, and how there's no level of generosity that's too much in our business. And he was, gracious and warm and paternal and protective. And that's exactly what a chef needs to be when you're running a team of people in a kitchen and restaurant. You really need to sort of treat it like family. And I learned all those things really, really young. And so he was enormous influence. I mean, more than I even realized at a very young age. I went to work with him because my mom and I had, I guess, the equivalent of a rap battle. I don't know. We were fighting with each other, and she finally told me to go to work and earn my own money if I wanted to buy, rock and roll music. So I did that, and I ended up in the pizzeria.
It's funny, Chef, how you tell those stories about being, back in the day, that your descriptive words you're using there, paternal and humble and nice. I think you left out a couple. You have to be a psychologist. You have to be a handyman. You have to be a sales broker. It's remarkable how many skills it takes to be running a restaurant like that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Just because people themselves are their own tool.
Chef, to this day, I think I should have gone to refrigeration school instead of cooking school. I think it would have served everyone in my orbit much more than the skills I actually know, because I am always trying to fix refrigeration. I'm not sure how, why, but do you find yourself always fixing equipment?
Are you kidding me? The last thing I ever want to hear is, well, the condenser's gone. God, come on.
Rocco, up until that point where you were under the tutelage of this Sal from Queens, what was your food experience like up until that point? Did your mom have an easy time feeding you? Were there types of foods that you liked or didn't like? I don't want to fall into the Italian cliche of you're a nonna and your mother fed you meatballs and macaroni on Sunday. So,
Oh, I fully deserve that description. I am the cliche, 100%, and I'm totally fine with it because it's a great experience without question and without reservation. I recommend it to anyone who has access to it. I don't think it exists anymore, unfortunately. But I ate pretty much anything my mom cooked, and it was a wide variety of foods, lots of different Italian foods. I remember our pizza never had cheese on it. Now, I think that's because that's how they made it in the town where my mom grew up. I think cheese was also very expensive, so I'm pretty sure that had something to do with it. But it was just tomato sauce and bread or pizza dough and sometimes anchovies. Can you imagine how popular that was with the kids in my neighborhood? Hey, would you like some pizza with anchovies on it? I would bring that to school and be banished to the courtyard outside. But the funny thing about where I grew up is I also grew up in one of the most densely populated areas of New York, Queens, and I was able to try foods from so many different cultural backgrounds in my neighborhood. And my mom was very adventurous, so I definitely had to eat a lot of the food that she cooked. But she was okay leaving the house and trying out, Chinese food, Jamaican food, Korean food, and on and on and on. So by the time I was 14 and moving on to high school, I'd been exposed to a lot of international cuisine and was really thrilled by it.
So is this the stuff that kind of made you decide, hey, you know what? Let's go to CIA, the Culinary Institute of America. I'm an alumni as well. Let me go there and really immerse myself in food, or was it let me work in restaurants for a while, then go there?
It's funny. The decision to go to the CIA, I think, came from a dare. A guy named Jimmy, who was a sous chef at a restaurant I was working at, was going to the CIA, and he made fun of me constantly because back then that's what you did. You just made fun of people you loved for some reason.
I still do it.
The kitchen bullying system worked, but it was really tough. But it made you, it pushed you to do try bigger and better things. Anyway, he kept telling me I'd never get in. I wasn't good enough to go. I should pick another career. He was relentless. So I think I did it just to prove him wrong, but it ended up being a very good decision for me because I loved the Culinary Institute of America. It was the perfect amount of schooling plus work, because at the CIA you're in class, but you're also running kitchens simultaneously. So it does mirror professional chef life. So you're working 12 to 14 hours a day. Working a lot was a really, really good thing for me. Using up my time working and focusing on cooking was really, really therapeutic for me. So I think that's why I went, but I ended up loving it from day one. I remember Chef Sonnenschmidt, if you went, I don't know if he was still there when you went.
He was there when I was there. Yep, he was.
Yeah. He taught us class the first day, taught us what the word mise en place was. And I was hooked, man. They tied their neckerchiefs so tight. It was so cool. It felt like such an elite squad. I felt like I was a Navy SEAL.
Yep.
I loved every minute of it. And now it's so much better than it was back then.
It's massive,
vast
right?
campus. And and they have a pool and a bar and a campus. And
And they're brewing beer.
Right. Yeah.
Just for those of you who don't know, mise en place, what chef is talking about there, it's one of the terms that gets beaten to your head as a chef. It means everything's in its place. So you have everything ready to go before you start cooking because, you don't want to get it ready while you're cooking. Have it ready before you start. Yeah, CIA was a great spot for me. I agree with you, chef. I had lots of experience. I went to CIA. I had no idea what a brunoise was, but I found out when I got out of school, that's for sure.
Yeah, after cutting buckets and buckets of brunoise, I'm sure you're at least your hands knew what they were. And now the word mise is basically slang for any kind of prepped food. Everybody knows what mise is, spelled MEEZ.
Me. Have your mise.
Mise. Rocco, so we've got a Sal in your story. We've got a Jimmy in your story. We've got this chef with a Bavarian last name that I cannot pronounce who was your instructor.
Sonnenschmidt. Yeah. Oh, got it, yeah.
And then somewhere along the line, you decide to cook, make a profession, and you come up with your first ever cookbook, Flavor, which we're coming on the 20th anniversary. So you did it when you were like 9. essentially. But I have a distinct memory of seeing this book and thinking, first of all, who is this guy? What is he doing? You've come so far. What was your intent when you made that cookbook 20 years ago? And when you look back now, did that intent come to fruition?
That was a fast 20 years, guys. Let me tell you. Wow. So I don't know that I had an intent. I was told by a number of people who were frequenting my restaurant that I should write a book, and I didn't understand why. And I really wasn't sure it was a good idea. I thought, why do I need to write a book? I'm here cooking. There's really no reason to write the book. You can just come into my restaurant if you want to try my food and my recipes. And then a very smart publisher who turned out to be one of my best customers, who I thought was a doctor, but was a publisher of cookbooks, was publishing Jamie Oliver and Nigella Lawson at the time, told me your book is, sort of your record, part of your legacy. It's a record of what you're doing at a certain time. And, 20 years from now, you'll be really happy that you wrote it, and you should take the time to do it. And what you're doing is super unique, and you need to get it down because you'll forget. And he was right about all of it. And I can't remember the stuff I cooked back then. I couldn't recreate a recipe if I tried. Good thing I cook with instinct instead of recipes, because I'm happy to just create new things. But a guy named Will Schwalbe, another name for you to remember, Schwalbe said, your cooking has a unique point of view. You need to figure it out and write about it. He had some really interesting insight and perspective. And he used to describe my food as, he had this incredible description for it, and I didn't even realize all that was going on. And in the process of writing the book over, through almost 3 years, I sort of he helped me, I helped me, my cooks and I all worked together to sort of try to create a narrative that made sense and explained what we did, which was to take ingredients and flavors from all over the world, bring them together in an interesting way, and try to find new places for old ingredients. Create these fusions of flavor, and fusion was a word that was being used a lot back then, that are exciting, that have a beginning, middle, and an end, that tell a short story, that have tension and resolution. And I tried to break it down into a way that I could explain it to the home cook, which was, it's super easy, guys. There are 4 basic flavors: sour, salt, sweet, bitter. They even remind me of colors, the primary colors, red, yellow, blue, green, not actually the primary colors. And so I assigned a flavor to a color and try to create this flavor matrix and explain the flavor of each dish using this color matrix. And if you look in the book, you'll see every dish has a bunch of dots next to it to try to visually describe this color matrix. I know it sounded very logical and intuitive at the time. Now I realize it was ridiculously exotic and ambitious, and to this day I'm not sure that you can learn about the flavor of the dish by looking at it in my color matrices, but people do understand the basic flavors now, and they definitely talk about that a lot. And one that was just being talked about at the time was umami, and obviously we all know that's all anybody talks about anymore, and I do mention it in the book. So I do give some credit to my publishers for allowing me to talk about experimental stuff. What was experimental in 97, 98. I shot all the dishes in the basement of my restaurant. The photographer sort of moved in for 6 months. And back then you had to shoot with Polaroids. I remember waiting for the Polaroids to dry. Most of your listeners won't know what I'm talking about.
Shake it like a Polaroid picture.
Yeah, exactly like that. Yeah, exactly. You had to shake it. And I remember we used something like 8,000 Polaroids or something like that. It was a very, very long food shoot.
It's interesting to me. You have a book that's this, it's been around for this long. How has your cooking changed? Like, do you still use some of these techniques? Do you actually have a go-to? Like, I have a couple of sauces that are my go-tos I can use for bases for lots of things. Is there anything like that from this book that you still use today?
Great question. I think for a lot of people whose work is part craft and part art, you always have to ask yourself, and I didn't know this back then, but now I definitely know this, who's my audience? Who am I cooking for? Why am I cooking? And that informs what you cook. And so now I basically separate the world into 2 people when I'm cooking. Are you, ready to take an adventure and go on a ride with me? Or do you just want comfort food and you'd like to see, my version of carbonara? And most of the people want comfort food right now. I can tell you that without question that a lot of people need comfort food in their lives right now. Spaghetti carbonara is the ultimate comfort food, and I've never made that dish so much as I have in the last 2 years, both in demos and for friends and family. And so if I'm doing comfort food, I pick the locked and loaded, tried and true dishes that I know people will love, like spaghetti carbonara. And if they want to go on a ride, then I get a little more ambitious, and I still cook a lot like I did back then. Mixing flavors, mixing ingredients from many cultures, and using my palate as a guide to bring me to a place that I think is exciting and wonderful. But I don't know what you've seen, Chef, but it's people really need to not be challenged by food these days.
Tons of cacio e pepe for me. People are asking for it nonstop.
Yeah, that's another great one.
They love that one.
That's in the top 5, I think. Yeah.
You're listening to our conversation with Rocco DiSpirito. You know Rocco. He's a James Beard Award-winning chef. He's a frequent host and guest on TV cooking shows. And he's been writing cookbooks for 20 years now. Later in the hour, we'll get to know another rock star chef. But this one is local. We talk with baker Adam Young. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum. Coming up after the break, Rocco DiSpirito is coming to Connecticut, and we'll talk about his plans for the Sun Wine and Food Fest. And we explore the connection between comfort food and dopamine.
The chemical reactions that happen when you eat a burger, when you eat pasta, when you eat fried chicken are similar to those that you feel when you're in love or when you eat chocolate.
That's why those New Year's diet resolutions are so hard to keep. This is Seasoned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Seasoned. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum.
We're talking with Chef Rocco DiSpirito. He'll be in Connecticut the last weekend in January as a featured chef at the Sun Wine and Food Fest at Mohegan Sun. And our very own Plum is a featured chef too.
In our first segment, we talked with Rocco about how he got his start in the food world at age 11 working at a pizzeria in Queens. And we talked about the philosophy behind his very first cookbook, Flavor, which was published almost 20 years ago. What's Rocco cooking for folks lately? Well, lots of comfort food.
When you talk about comfort food, it resonates for me because I know that you've often talked about your own cooking as an antidepressant. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because that is kind of a through line, I think, pre-pandemic for you.
Sure. Well, I think we all know now what happens chemically when we eat food. When I wrote this book, we were just starting to understand about, what serotonin was and dopamine was and chemicals in your brain firing depending on what you're eating. And now there's so much science out there and so much experience. There's no question that the foods you eat create certain feelings for you. And comfort food is comfort food because the chemical reactions that happen when you eat a burger, when you eat pasta, when you eat fried chicken are similar to those that you feel when you're in love or when you eat chocolate and other pleasurable activities. I'll just leave it at that. And the amount of dopamine released when you eat chocolate, when you're in love, when you eat pasta can be measured now. And some of these comfort foods release high levels of dopamine. Another way to get dopamine released is to do a cold plunge. Have you guys seen how everyone's posting these polar bear plunges now?
Terrible idea. Terrible.
Apparently, that's a really good way to get a ton of dopamine released. And I'll stick with the spaghetti carbonara. But
Thank you.
Everybody's chasing dopamine, right? This is what everybody wants: free dopamine without having to take outside substances. So food is an outside substance that can act as an antidepressant. But it worked on 2 levels for me. As a kid with raging ADHD, undiagnosed, it was very, very important for me to be occupied by something that was captivating, that captured all of my attention, used up all of my energy every single day. Cooking was definitely the perfect solve for that. It's the perfect solve for anyone who has too much energy. It'll use up all your energy and then some very quickly, and you'll be happy to do it. If you're a person who needs a lot of stuff to do and you can't just sit quietly with yourself in a room, sometimes cooking is a great way to use up that energy. So it worked for me therapeutically on 2 levels. One, because food, of course, is wonderful to eat and helps you feel good, makes you feel good, just like drugs and other substances. But also the work made me feel good and helped me get through a lot of uncertain times because the work was very powerful and it felt very important to me. It felt, obviously we're feeding people, which is probably one of the greatest gestures you can make when you care about someone, whether they're strangers or friends or family or not. Cooking for someone is without question a very, very powerful way to say that they matter, that they mean something, they have value in the world. And it was also a way for me to, feel useful and like I was learning and like I was progressing, because there's always something new to learn in cooking. Try to imagine a world pre-YouTube if you can. Think about that for a second. There was a time where you actually had to go do the work to learn the craft. For anyone under 30, that's going to sound preposterous, but it's true. You had to go to a place where the craft was, executed every day. You had to beg to get a job and be useful and be valuable and be really cool and be fun to be around. And people would then at some point start teaching you how to do this work. And so that process was great for me as a kid and as a young adult and even as an adult.
As I was listening to you talk about the very act of cooking for other people and what emotions that sparks within you, do you feel that applies to cooking for yourself as well? Because as I've followed your journey professionally, I've seen your health journey, and it's been remarkable, and I've tried to implore it in my own life. But how does that idea of cooking for other people and what that brings to you, does that also apply, do you think, when you cook for yourself?
Well, I talk about it extensively. Cooking is one of the kindest acts. And when you cook for yourself, you're making choices for yourself that are always going to be better than other people will make for you. So for sure, it's a great way to take care of yourself. And for those of you out there who are thinking, I can't, get my hands on great healthy food, it's so hard for me to make better choices. The first thing you have to do is learn how to cook something for yourself and eat some homemade food. Even if you're making comfort food or junk food at home, there are so many chemicals and preservatives and methods of, pasteurization and sealing and oh my God, packaging that happen to our food, our commercially made food, that you would never, ever choose or be able to duplicate at home, that are harmful, that are not adaptive. So cooking for yourself is definitely a way to be kind to yourself. It's definitely a form of self-care, and without question is super adaptive and something people should practice every day. I think, unfortunately, we're getting farther and farther away from that. I think people are cooking, even during the pandemic, somehow people are cooking less than they were before because, delivery foods exploded even more. And if you can imagine that. And so people are getting food delivered 2-3 times a day now, at least in New York City, from what I've seen and experienced.
They were homemaking banana bread. They were perfecting their banana bread, but everything else they were ordering out.
Yes. And their sourdough. Their sourdough in a Dutch oven.
That's right.
Yeah. So what's happening is a lot of people are cooking for entertainment now, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's wonderful. And I'm glad the Food Network has been there to teach people how to cook at home. But I don't think people are making it part of their everyday routine. I think they're using what they've learned about cooking as a form of entertainment, as a way to create content for their IG, which is all good. And that's certainly better than not cooking at all. But if you could take it a little farther and cook a few meals a week or a few meals a day, I think that would be a way to be the kindest to yourself and to your family.
Well, Chef, we got a fun event coming up at the end of the month, the Mohegan Sun Food and Wine Fest. You're a staple there. Connecticut loves you. I heard you tell a story about coming to do Sun Food and Wine Fest and then right back to the restaurant in New York. And we're just hoping it's because everybody loves you here. That's what I'm hoping for. I hope you don't have to do that again.
Yeah, a few years ago, I had to do that. I was opening a restaurant and I had to go right back. And it's funny because you make those decisions at the time, and then a pandemic happens and you're wondering why you took things so seriously. Oh my God. I forgot about that. Yeah, I was like sort of rushed back and forth, and it turns out it probably would have been fine if I didn't go back. But this year I'm coming early. I'm leaving late. I'm going to stay until they kick me out. But I'm super excited about Mohegan Sun because they do a couple of things that a lot of festivals don't do, which is, one, they really throw down the red carpet for chefs. They make us feel super comfortable. They treat us like honored guests, and we get to have a really good time in addition to, of course, cooking the food and doing the events, which are all happen in a really lively casino atmosphere. So they're always fun. They always have great bands there. So almost every year I run into a legend that I've loved for 20 years, which is a great part of the fun. And their array of chefs is incredible. Chef Plum, you'll be there, right?
Yes, sir. I'll be there too.
Manit Chawan will be there. Michael Simon will be there.
Robert Irvine.
Yeah.
So many great chefs. Yeah. It's like a big family reunion, it feels like, or a high school reunion. I mean, you have all these amazing chefs making delicious dishes. You can come taste them all. Like Chef said, the casino atmosphere. It's like a big party all weekend. And it's my absolute favorite event of the year. Chef, we're both doing Celebrity Chef Dine Around. Great event. What are you making?
It is super fun. And the people who come are the perfect blend of culinary aficionados to be, or like have become a foodie on their to-do list, and just really chill, cool people who have their expectations in the right place.
Yeah.
It's very hard to do that when you go to a food festival, because I think, it's hyped up so much that when you get there, sometimes you're expecting, like a 3-star Michelin Monaco experience. And it's really not like that at food festivals. It's much more casual and much more fun. And the people who come to this particular one are ready to have fun and have good food. And I think in that order, which is great for us, because chefs are a little loony, and we like to, control things and make things as perfect as possible at all times. And so when you're dealing with really chill people who understand it's all a bit of fun, it makes it a lot easier for us. I'm making a duck and maitake mushroom lasagna.
Oh,
so nothing crazy there. When I say I'm making, I mean Chef Tammy is making. Chef Tammy is going to make 10,000 portions of a dish that I've made, 100 portions of before. Chef Tammy is the executive chef now, I think, right?
She's a executive chef in banquets, man. Shout out to her. She's a champion.
Yeah. Chef Tammy is the reason the food festival is so good, because she rocks it and she makes sure that everybody's set up and doing well. And she knows the kitchens, and it's a big place that I get lost in all the time. So
I love that you talk about a duck mushroom lasagna affair. Nothing too crazy. Nothing fancy.
Crazy. Yes, it's easy.
Oh, easy peasy.
Porridge, mushrooms, no big deal. Right?
No big deal.
It sounds amazing. I can't wait to give it a try. Are you doing a demo too as well on the stage?
I'm not doing a demo this year. I'm doing a bourbon tasting, I believe, on the Friday night. Yeah.
I can't wait to be a part of that. That's going to be a lot of fun.
I think Manit is doing a demo, which is always fun. Manit Chawan.
I'm doing one, and I'm hosting one of the stages too.
Oh, great.
And doing the dine around.
Awesome. What are you demoing?
We're going to do some, we're going to make some really easy, super simple, like chicken mole tacos.
Ooh,
easy at home. We're going to make tortillas. I'll throw them at people, make a big scene.
Wow. Fun.
I'm going to be making roast beef and cheese sandwiches for my son, who will be at a wrestling tournament in upstate Connecticut. So I will be there in spirit.
In spirit only? Oh, that's too bad. You got to go where your son goes. That's great. I was a wrestler in high school. It's a tough life.
It sucks.
Gotta keep him fit. And the problem is, the better he gets at it, the worse it's for you.
I know.
The more travel.
Yeah,
I know. Yeah. Not because he's my kid, but he is very good.
Yeah, so you're going to be doing a lot of traveling.
And wrestlers eat a lot, so make a lot of roast beef sandwiches.
I was going to say they burn 5,000 calories a day.
Actually, I should rope you two in. They have these big tournaments, and pre-pandemic, all the families were expected to.
Boy, look at the time, chef.
Like
you got to get out of here.
I was going to say, I don't fit my singlet anymore.
I have an idea.
I wrestled 145. I haven't been that weight in a long time.
I think my leg weighs 145, chef. Rocco, we really appreciate you taking some time to hang out with us here on Seasoned Chef. We really appreciate you. We hope everyone heads out to Mohegan Sun at the end of the month to see Chef Rocco DiSpirito making this amazing lasagna. Oh, yeah, And we can't wait to taste this lasagna, Chef. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, Rocco.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
That was Rocco DiSpirito. He's a James Beard award-winning chef and the author of 13 books about cooking and wellness. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum. We're going to take a short break. When we come back, you'll hear my conversation with Chef Adam Young of Sift Bakery in Mystic, and get our very different tips for making creme brulee at home.
You want the contrast between a light textured custard and, of course, that brittle caramelized sugar on top.
You're listening to Seasoned. We'll be right back.
Welcome back to Seasoned. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum.
We're spending the hour getting to know two chefs you'll be lucky enough to see in real life later this month at the Sun Wine and Food Fest at Mohegan Sun.
Our next guest is Chef Adam Young.
Adam opened Sift Bake Shop in Mystic in 2016. In 2020, Sift expanded to include Mix, a seasonal rooftop cocktail bar that got a lot of attention last summer. Adam also owns Young Buns Donuts. In 2018, Adam won Season 2 of Food Network's Best Baker in America. Imagine that. The best baker in America, right here in our little state. Chef Plum talked with Adam about his culinary journey and how he discovered a love for baking after an internship mix-up.
Chef Adam Young, welcome to Seasoned.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
We appreciate you taking the time, man. I know you're a baker, so, I mean, actually, your day's probably just ending now. Who knows? I don't know. You guys, you don't sleep or something. You work like vampire hours. I don't quite understand it.
After 5 or 6 years, it's gotten a little bit better. We've got a great team, amazing bakers. But I still get here pretty early in the morning and still some very long days.
Well, that's kind of your thing, like your relentless dedication to that. One of the things you're known for. I mean, do you really start every single day at 3 a.m.?
So now the Sift Bakery has gotten to be a 24-hour a day operation. So we run it in 3 shifts.
No way.
And then, so we have, the bread bakers and the croissant bakers start first thing in the morning. They come in the earliest, and then we stagger in the team kind of throughout the day. A lot of the prep happens for the following day in the afternoon. So I usually roll in here around 5 or 6 o'clock, an hour before opening, make sure everything's looking the way it's supposed to look. And then we're open for the day.
And that's 5 or 6 o'clock in the morning. And I'm sure your bakers there look at you like, oh, there's Chef in his banker's hours.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's no shortage of smack talking in the kitchen for sure, But
of course not.
But it's been wonderful to have the team. We've got some real longevity downstairs and some real talent from all over the place, and I'm very pleased with how things are going. And it's nice to see the kind of progression, and be able to deliver kind of the quality product and consistently, especially with the current climate that it is, in the world, and there's a lot of challenges, but we're thankful to be able to have a team who's still inspired, still excited to come to work and work really, really hard for us and keep in mind the guest experience first and foremost.
Hey, every new day is exciting, right? We never know what's happening tomorrow, that's for sure. Hey, I was interested to find out when we were doing research on you. I didn't know you grew up in a dairy farm in Vermont.
I sure did.
Did that kind of help your work ethic with, being a baker and working your butt off?
100%. And what I tell people is we lived sustainably 20 years before it was cool. And we did it out of necessity. My parents worked extremely hard. I attribute a lot of my work ethic to them. And we did it because there was, frankly, no other alternative. We lived off the animals and the products and the produce and the dairy that we created from when I was a little boy until I became a teenager and started working in restaurants. So, it was just, I didn't know anything else. I just thought there was no pre-made products in my house. I never had a Pop-Tart until I was like 20 years old in culinary school, So,
wow.
But just things like that, but you don't know anything else. You just think that's how it's supposed to be. And I'm very thankful for that every day because it gave me a real life indication of what it means to work. And that directly translates to our industry and an appreciation for obviously the farmers and vendors and cultivators, everybody who contributes to our food and beverage operations that are very much behind the scenes and don't get the credit that they should have.
The bake shop, you have to experience it fully to appreciate it. But can you describe what people might see on a typical day when they walk into the panoramic light-filled space in Mystic? Like what's in the case?
So we have a pretty diverse menu. We've got our signature croissants. So there's about a dozen different flavors and techniques that we use. Everything from the quintessential staples, the chocolate, the plain, the ham and cheese, and then we do some kind of more unique items. Spring we do like a buttermilk and blackberry croissant. We do lemon lavender, a basil, all pistachio, all types of different flavors. And it creates something cool for the guests, and it also creates a cool experience for the bakers as well. It's not the run of the mill. It's not that, it's something that's unique and keeps them engaged and motivated.
That's what I was going to say. That's important.
Oh, 100%. Especially if you want to attract great talent. And then we have, the entremet case, the petit gâteau case, which is kind of like the flashy, super technique involved, like mirror glazed entremets. And we like to do a nice balance of modern and classical stuff. So there's everything from like Saint Honoré to opera to macaron framboise with lychee and rosewater, to some more modern items. We have this, what we call the planet pistachio, which is a pistachio, looks like a planet with, rhubarb and sheep's milk and that sort of thing. So again, trying to keep a nice balance of traditional stuff and then some things that are kind of a little more modern and are something that you may not see everywhere. We do these enormous cookies. They're like a Frisbee. They're like the size of your head, right? They're just huge, right?
Love it.
And we do a big variety of cookies, everything from like a gluten-free ginger molasses to chocolate walnut sea salt to oatmeal blueberry. I mean, these are things that rotate all the time. We try to do a seasonal quarterly rotation. And then whenever any of the staff has ideas, we encourage them. We just run it. It's not the Adam Young show. It's very much a collective effort. And we encourage all the bakers, if someone has a new idea, if the baristas have a new latte idea, just go ahead and do it, have some creative freedom. And I think it gives them a sense of value.
Talk a little bit about your culinary journey with our listeners.
Sure.
Have you always been into baking?
No, actually, a little known secret. I never went to pastry school, oddly enough. I went to culinary school before they started offering pastry programs. And I left home when I was young. I graduated high school a little early. And I went straight. I had worked since I was, I don't know, maybe 12 years old as a dishwasher and did the normal, kind of migration through the kitchen stations from dishwasher to prep cook to butchery and garde-manger and all that stuff. So when I went to culinary school, I had a pretty good idea of the sense of work ethic and the sense of self-discipline and, a very minimal foundation of technique and skill set. So I think I was pretty well set up for culinary school. I went to the New England Culinary Institute. It was a fantastic program at the time, located in Montpelier, Vermont. And it was no more than just, frankly, a series of for-profit butcher shops, restaurants, bakeries. So it gave you a real serious, firm depiction of what the industry really looks like. So graduated from New England Culinary Institute with a degree in culinary. And then I went to work for this French master chef in New Orleans. His name was René Bajou. And one of the better chefs in the city, great reputation, couple of great restaurants, and very, very focused, massive brigade, and really exciting place to work when you're 19 years old.
Just so people know, he says massive brigade. What he's talking about is that's the amount of like cooks and prep cooks and dishwashers in the kitchen. In the culinary world, the brigade is the team in the kitchen.
Yep. So anyway, growing up in Vermont and rural, dairy farm, moving to downtown New Orleans was quite the culture shock at 19. But, the hotel was gracious enough to put me up for a few days. I moved down there with, less than a suitcase and with just my whites and my knives in it basically. And showed up for work the first day. And I had this lined up for a few months. And I remember the sous chef greeting me at the back loading dock. And he's like, "Well, who are you?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm Adam, I'm your newest culinary intern." He's like, "We have absolutely, no reference to you. No, there's not." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I had this whole thing lined up. He's like, "Yeah, well," he's like, "you can work here, but the bake shop needs help. We don't need any help on the line." So
as a chef and you're coming in there, they said you can work in the bake shop. I'm sure your eyes got big as golf balls. You want to know what?
Oh yeah, totally. No, and that's not what I had intended to do. I wanted to be a chef, and I wanted the glory that comes along with working on the line and all that good stuff. And the bakery was like, great, I've got to bake breakfast pastries and scoop muffins and stuff. And it just wasn't appealing to me. So anyway, I started, and they had this amazing pastry chef. She was fabulous. Her name was Joy Jessup. She knew I was a little bit hesitant, and she took me under her wing. She really pushed me hard, and I learned a lot of amazing fundamental techniques and started to really fall in love with the world of pastry. And I explained it to everybody. I said, listen, savory cooking is very, very intuitive. You can season, you can manipulate, you can change things, you can kind of make it your own. Whereas pastry is like controlled variables, same result every time. There's not a lot of room for error. And that style of working, it became really appealing to me, and I still love to cook savory, but really pastry, how the ingredients work together from a functionality standpoint, as well as a flavor standpoint, is something that's really, really interesting to me. And something since then I've pursued specifically pastry jobs to kind of follow up and build my arsenal of experience. So that was kind of the pivotal moment for me when I say, 19, 20 years old. And I was kind of by chance thrown into the pastry industry and just fell in love with it.
That's great.
From there, I worked in all different types of venues, everything from super fine dining like restaurants in Washington, D.C., down to Palm Beach in Florida. Worked at a country club there for a while, and then for about 4 or 5 years, and then moved back to New England to open a place in Rhode Island called the Ocean House, which is this massive, super luxe, 5-star, but you name it, they've got every accolade out there, right? And I was on the opening team in 2010 as the head pastry chef. 25 years old. I had no business having that job. Certainly was not qualified to do it, but I made it my own and was there for about 5 years previous to opening Sift here. So
good gig.
So that's kind of my issue. It was a great gig and it opened a lot of doors. And you know, I attribute a lot of our success here to my experience there. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
You know, sometimes you got to just take that jump, whether you feel like you deserve it, you're ready for it, you have the experience for it. Just take the leap and let's hope you can swim.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I certainly never would have hired me, but they took a chance, and they actually ended up working out well in everyone's favor, I think. So, but yeah, and, you know, we've had Sift here for about 6 years, and within the past couple, we've been able to really kind of build on our own little hospitality overarching brand, right? And so we've added Mix, the cocktail bar on the roof, which has been wonderful and allows me to dabble back in the savory a little bit. Young Buns Donuts, the chocolate company, which is going from strictly e-commerce to brick and mortar soon. And then we've got another Sift over in Watch Hill. So we're busy. We got a lot going on.
Well, I was about to ask you that because in a time when, you know, mom and pop shops have kind of had to scale back or put plans on hold, you've been able to expand, which is really cool to see. How did the donut shop come about, and what's the secret to making this stuff happen?
It was one of those things where we did it out of necessity. You know, when the pandemic first hit, everyone took massive financial hits, and we had, frankly, more employees than jobs. So that piece of real estate just happened to come up right across the street from Sift on Main Street. And we did a quick renovation and created some more jobs. So kind of helped folks that I didn't have the money or the funds or the business coming in to keep employed. It allowed us to not have to lay anybody off.
That's fantastic, man. So now, because of all that hard work and success and Food Network appearances, we haven't even talked about that yet, but all that stuff, you're actually get to be one of the celebrity chefs featured at Mohegan Sun's Food and Wine Fest coming up at the end of the month.
Yes.
And I'm there as well. We're gonna have a great time, and I'm looking really close. I can't wait for this creme brulee you're making, and I recommend you hide them because I move very quickly for a large gentleman. I can grab them very fast.
Oh, I hope to welcome you to the table here. No, it's great, and it's great to be a part of that, and it's great to be recognized. As I'm sure you know, you feel very much the same way. It's nice to be recognized with that caliber of folk, and really be able to showcase your talents and put your best foot forward. The creme brulee we're doing, so basically it's kind of like an inverted creme brulee that we set with some different gelling agents like agar. We call it the virtual creme brulee, but it's basically just an inverted creme brulee that is firm enough to slice into batons.
Okay.
Right? We caramelize the top the same way, and that goes with like these big white chocolate tempered curls, some different olive oil powder or white chocolate powder that we just make with like maltodextrin.
Olive oil powder.
Yes. So we use a tapioca starch called tapioca maltodextrin, and we use that for a lot of different sweet and savory applications. So it allows you to turn fats into powders, right? And then you put the powder in your mouth, it mixes with the enzymes in your saliva, it turns back into a fat again. Pretty cool stuff. But we like to mess around with a lot of that type of thing at the bakery.
That's awesome. And I tell you what, you're really making my creme brulees feel not nearly as cool, chef. I had this past summer, I was doing creme brulee of the weekend as a private chef with my client out in the Hamptons. And
Cool.
She was like, oh my gosh, you're making creme brulees of the weekend. This is incredible. I said, yep, different one every weekend. Well, it's because I figured out, chef, if I take some ice cream, whatever flavor you want, melt it down, add an egg yolk, bake it in a water bath. It's perfect every time. And then you just sugar it and caramelize it.
Presso,
It's
yeah.
perfect. But that's the difference between a baker and a chef right there. I'm, old shortcut plum and,
Oh, stop. No. But for the record, my savory cooking sucks. So.
Well, listen, it's a safe bet that most home cooks aren't making a creme brulee as stunning as what they'll see at the Sun Food and Wine Fest. But can we offer some tips that, for home cooks making a classic creme brulee at home?
Sure.
I mean, if you want to make real creme brulee, not like I'm just talking about melted ice cream, but it does work.
What's truly important is you want to create kind of the sealed chamber as you're in a water bath as you're baking your creme brulees, right? So, and I like to use as little eggs as possible. Obviously, the proteins in the eggs coagulate. That's what firms up the custard, right? So scale back the yolks a little bit, try to make as delicate as the custard as you can. And when we bake them in a pan with tight aluminum foil over the top. low and slow, 300, 275 degrees, somewhere in that range, with a nice shallow water bath because it creates that steaming chamber inside the pan. The whole objective is you want the contrast between a light textured custard and, of course, that brittle caramelized sugar on top. We like to use like a turbinado sugar and torch it on top. Nice, thick, crispy, like super caramelized, really rich flavor. That bitterness from that caramelization obviously offsets, the delicate custard, the sweet custard. It's all about balance, balancing textures, balancing hot versus cold, balancing the flavors. Get creative with it. You can use any type of infusion you want when you're warming up your dairy for the custard. You can put all types of different aromatic spices, purees, that sort of thing. But really getting the custard as delicate as possible, baking it at a low temperature in a nice water bath and moist chamber.
Yeah, I can't emphasize enough what Chef's talking about there. Breaking it low and slow, completely couldn't agree more. And having that water bath is so important. It keeps it, number one, from getting too hot and browning on the bottom, but it also kind of keeps that temperature even all along and adds that moisture in the air, which I think is really important as well.
Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it doesn't have to be the super elaborate recipe. If it works for you, great. And if it's 3 ingredients and you throw it in the oven for half an hour, great. At the end of the day, you're just looking for the end result. Is it good? Is it delicious?
That's the main question there. Is it delicious? If you can answer yes to that, then you're good to go.
Right.
Chef, I don't want to spend a long time on it, but I think it's important to point out, you've had some success on Food Network, and I like to think that you kind of come from the same school of thought as I have. These successes that we have, being able to do things on television or do things on radio, they're a byproduct of a lot of hard work to get there.
100%, and it's kind of a double-edged sword to me as someone who's in the industry and has done, fairly well, and has been able to have the opportunity to become successful and the good luck and good fortune. The Food Network, they've given me all these opportunities, but I think it gives people an unrealistic depiction, a very romanticized depiction of what the industry looks like.
Absolutely.
Before Food Network and still long after, I still clean the grease trap. I still mop the floors. I still receive 18-wheelers full of goods and dairy and have to put it away and schlep all this stuff. It really does not. I think people see the Food Network and all the TV stuff and the Chopped and all that, right? And they think, wow, that guy's got a really glamorous lifestyle. But they don't know the career that led up to that and the career that you still have to maintain after the show airs. So it's wonderful because it's great advertisement for us. It gives us great exposure. And I actually really enjoy doing it. But there's a lot that people don't see.
Tons.
As you know.
On the network, you've won Best Baker, right? Best Baker in America. You won that, and you judged some shows as well.
Yeah, so I think 2018, I won Best Baker in America. That was wonderful for the shops. It brought us great exposure, and it was nice to be able to compete against some of those industry pros who, like Jean-Francois Souteau, who was the executive producer of the Greenbrier. The guy is a legend in our industry. Yeah. It was nerve-wracking, but it was a lot of fun.
Adam Young, it's been a pleasure getting to know you and hang out with you here. You're an absolute inspiration to every baker in the state. Pretty sure you probably need to get to bed or getting close to your bedtime here. You're going to be at work in an hour and a half or something else. Thanks for joining us on Season, my friend.
Thank you so much for having me. Great to talk to you.
That was baker Adam Young. He owns Sift Bake Shop, Mix Rooftop Bar, and Young Buns Donuts in Mystic. The Sun Wine and Food Fest is happening at Mohegan Sun the weekend of January 27th through the 30th. We'll have a link to it on our show page. Just go to ctpublic.org/seasoned. I'm Marisol Castro.
And I'm Chef Plum. Seasoned is produced by Robyn Doyon-Aitken and Catie Talarski.
Thanks for listening, everyone. See you next week.
I like my creme brulee, but his does sound delicious.